I'm Freestyle, and thank you so very much for joining me. If this is your first time joining me, the philosophy of this podcast is to speak to the players who are shaping the metagame so that their voices can be heard. This week's voice is Condescend, perhaps better known as Adam Yurchek, the article writer for TCG Player and a previous Grand Prix winner. He recently took second in the Pauper Premier League, but more recently, he took first in the Sunday Challenge, the same day that I took third. We're going to have a conversation about that. We're going to also have a conversation about Magic in general. You'll find that we're just going to have a conversation because Adam was one of the few friends I made when I lived in Ohio. We hadn't talked in a long time. This is going to be a little different than some of my other interviews. This is the first person that I've known from real life. So sit back and enjoy the last Sunday challenge of the Astrolabe metagame, The Last Snow.
Hi, I'm Adam Yurchik, Condescend on MTGO, and I have been writing for TCGplayer.com for almost 9 years now, which is crazy to me. And I also write some finance content on QuietSpeculation.com. I do some Magic coaching one-on-one and through the Magic Mastermind group. Been doing that for almost 4 years now, which is also crazy. And that's actually been really rewarding and has definitely helped my game. And I've also been a bit of a Magic Online grinder lately. Definitely the challenges and especially the introduction of the end of the year format playoffs, which was announced at the end of last year, really got me even more fired up to play. So I've been grinding Vintage and Pauper and Legacy, and I was grinding Commander back when that was competitive. That was great. I also was a Pro Tour grinder. I played 26 Pro Tours to various degrees of success. I've won a Grand Prix, was on the U.S. national team, and have made a lot of great connections through the community. So it's been fun to get more involved in Pauper. I was playing in the Pauper Premier League over the summer. It was really cool to show Pauper on a bigger stage. I'm looking forward to seeing more of those. And also just all this support from Wizards has been cool. I'm hoping for that Pauper Grand Prix.
Can you tell me about how you first started playing Magic the Gathering?
Yeah, it's always kind of a funny story. Basically, my best friend, kid from school, he played back since, I want to say revised. So probably since he was like 8 or something. So he tried to get me into it in like 98 when I was like 11, maybe even a year before that. I think he even had a computer game. I don't know if it was Chandelar or something else, but I just was not into it. But then the next spring of 99, like 6th grade, I don't know, 6th grade, 7th grade, I don't even know. My friends started playing like in the local neighborhood. Like one day, like 2 kids just had like 5th edition starter decks or whatever. And I, at that point, had to play. So then I just got into it. We went up to a local card shop, bought some cards, and then, that was it. And just played with 5-color big decks, just no idea what's going on. And then eventually like started researching it, realized there was like information online, started finding out about stuff, learning there was rarity, because like my friend who I got into it, my original friend who tried to get me into it, I went and played with him. Obviously he was happy I started playing, and he was like, oh, I don't like 6th edition rules, you want to buy like 5th edition. So he like made me buy like the worst cards, which was funny because he used to play with his mom. Like, he literally played with his mom. They had it, like, set up on the kitchen table. Like, they played, like, Commander before Commander, and they had, like, dozens of cards in play, hundreds of cards in play. Obviously not hundreds. Dozens of cards, and they, like, didn't kill each other. And they just, like, amassed a massive board and just, I don't know, played Magic in some different way. So, like, when I Armageddon him, like, I Armageddon him stuff, and he just didn't want to play with me. Like, I quickly outgrew him. I actually brought him to a tournament. That was kind of the end of it. So then I started playing in an arena league in the mall, which was like Wizards used to have stores called Gamekeeper, and they had a league. So I played in the mall, like in the food court. They roped off, and there was like a bunch of nerds in the food court playing as like kids from school, walk by shopping and stuff. And we just grounded out. And then I found out about JSS, Junior Super Series tournaments for kids, and scholarships, and won one of those. And obviously, then I just like turned out I was just pretty good at it and just got completely obsessed. That was all she wrote. Went to JSS Nationals in Florida, and like saw Nationals, saw John Finkel, like saw all, just the full reality of it all. And then eventually outgrew that. Got to the Pro Tour ground, just put in an insane amount of time and hours, dedication. It's actually crazy to think back.
At some point in this journey, I actually do meet you, right? And my observation, because I'm traveling around to a lot of Grand Prix, I'm certainly not anyone too special. Like I was, a very highly ranked player in my state, because we're talking the era when there were, buys at Grand Prix if your constructed rating was high enough. So I got 2 buys at any Grand Prix I want to go to. So I'm going to a handful of different Grand Prix, and I keep running into you, and I keep running into you outside of these tournaments, because you and I choose to walk around the building instead of stay in the magic hall with all like the magic stuff that goes on. In between rounds, you and I apparently just like to walk around buildings and talk to ourselves about our games. And I think is after the 3rd time, and also running into, I think I ran into you briefly at the Pro Tour in Honolulu in 2009 as well. So I think it's just like after the 3rd time, I was like, hey.
That's funny. On the same wavelength.
That's just what that made me think of, was that time period in Magic, I guess. Buys at Grand Prix. But it sounds like you've sort of seen all of it, right? You've seen the actual kitchen table games that aren't about winning at all. And then you've seen the other side of it, where wins mean thousands of dollars on the Pro Tour. So it's fascinating that you've sort of had that experience where you've seen all aspects of the game in that way, not just live but also online, because I'm sure you've played just for fun online with some random format that you had no reasonable expectation of prizes in. On the other side, you're taking down challenges in formats that you don't even make content for, right? I'm correct in that, right? You don't make Pauper content, you do like modern articles and such?
Yeah, very, maybe like 5% or less or something. Like I wrote about Pauper maybe once or twice. Like I think I did an article where I talked about a bunch of formats that included it. I think I wrote about it one dedicated article, and like vintage, yeah, little tiny bit. But mostly modern, some legacy, standard. Modern is just like an endless wealth of content.
That's interesting. I think modern is an interesting format as well. It just doesn't have my attention right now. I thought that it would when I got back into playing the game. I really thought modern was going to be where I wound up. But
interesting, because that's kind of how I've thought too. Like I was a great extended player. If you look back like on those rating things, it's a defunct format now. Like in the whatever, I don't know the guy who does it off the top of my head, but my name's up there in extended, and I was like, my GP win is in extended. I thought I was going to crush modern, because modern is just like extended, but I've never, I've had some periods of small success in modern, but I've never truly got super deep in love, crushing modern, mastering it. Certain decks at different time periods, and actually, like I grind the challenges on the weekend. I don't play the modern challenge. I used to a little bit, but the modern one is super competitive, and it's not as fun. I really like grinding formats like Pauper, because they're so unique and it's legitimately fun. Like when I play Vintage, it's the highlight of my week. It's super exciting. I have to say Pauper is exciting too, but Pauper is an extreme grind. Pauper is not the same kind of fun as slamming Black Lotuses. Pauper, honestly, playing Pauper is kind of like work. You have to grind out every card, and you have to do it perfect. But that last weekend I was doing that, and I found the flow, getting that flow state where it does become play, where you have to be focused for 50 minutes. I was actually struggling, because I play the challenges, and I will double queue. So I'll play Legacy in the morning at 11, and then I'll play Pauper at 1. And it's extremely tough, and I will say pretty much impossible to do that playing a deck like Jeskai Snow in this current iteration. So I found myself really struggling, kind of forcing the issue and double queuing. And like sometimes like my clock runs out when I'm just single queuing this deck. So last weekend, my goal has been to use it as an opportunity to work on my focus and finding that hour of focus and that flow state, and actually every single decision being made is being made correctly, because you can't have a single lapse. There's so often I'll just make a single lapse in Pauper games, and you just feel your soul just draining out, because like this game you thought you couldn't lose, and they just ephemerate the Muldrifter and it's over, or whatever sequence. So many things. Even last weekend, I really should dig through the games. Maybe not the best play of the week, but the worst play. I made one little play somewhere where I gave them an edge, or gave them like a spot to get in, or at least one spot, that I
Just one? Just one? Because I know I made a handful of really bad mistakes when I went back through and looked at my matches.
I need to go through and more and watch. I know at least one that I noticed when I was playing that I saw in front of me, like the world shake or whatever.
Oh, yeah, where it's like, yeah, everything like you just panic. You're like, no, did I just do that?
And you're just sitting there like staring at the screen. I'm covering my face, just F6, just hoping I come back, and it's it's not sideboarding. I need, yeah, I don't, yeah, I wish I can try to dig through and find it.
I have one of those too. I would love to share mine with you if you have one for me as well. I definitely have one of those from this weekend.
I need, yeah, I don't, yeah, I wish I can try to dig through and find it.
Well, mine happened in the top 8, where like maybe I should not be in the top 4 because I play bad.
Ooh, yeah, like that's the thing. When I make these mistakes, like you realize when you make a mistake, you don't when you lose, you can't get upset because you messed up. When someone like gets, when you mull the 4 or whatever, like it sucks, but you really can't get too mad, because at the end of the day, it was just bad luck. When I get upset is when you throw away the game because you make that one tiny little mistake, and then things crumble, and that's the difference between the players that win and lose. That's the game. These little things.
Very, very much true, man. Very much true. So in my case, I'm playing against Affinity. I have 12 life, and he has, it's either 2 Mirror Enforcers and 1 Carapace Forger, or the other combination of that problem for me. And I finally got a good race going, right? And I crack in for my 3 core Skyfishers to put him down to where the next attack is lethal. And in my hand have 2 Ardent Recruits. And I'm just going to play out my 2 Ardent Recruits. That way I can block one, and even if he has a Galvanic Blast or a Fling, I still live, right? Where he needs to have a Tog Fling to kill me at this point, which he clearly doesn't have either of those 2 cards the way this game has gone. And then I just tap my mana wrong, and I can only play one of my Ardent Recruits. So I just leave a huge window open for my opponent to just be like, Galvanic Blast, your only blocker, attack you for your exact life total, So it's just one of those things where it's like, no, I did not have 6. Oh, no. It's like one of those things that could never happen in paper Magic. It was just like I got excited. I'm like, oh, I have the win. Like, I have him here. And I just tapped my mana wrong. Yeah, so that was my world was freezing this moment from the challenge.
Freezing, the chill just goes over you. Yeah, I wish I knew my exact situation. Something subtle, some sort of sequence, so that my kind of realization is that these Jeskai mirrors are true control mirrors. They're not, they're actually Psychotog mirrors, they're Cobblade mirrors, they are whatever, 5-color control, whatever control back you think about. This is actually a true control mirror, and I found that pretty much any time that I am over aggressive is a mistake, and you just want to be hyper conservative. Never give up any sort of card for damage or anything like that. And that's also why I've moved away from like Seeker of the Way, which is like awesome versus aggro, but it doesn't generate value.
I never liked Seeker. I never was a fan of Seeker in that deck.
And I've never been extremely happy with Spell Stutter, but I played 4 last weekend and it was obviously did work through the value Trinket Mage.
I really enjoyed playing against so many spell setters this last weekend because like my whole deck costs 1 mana. So the Jeskai opponent telegraphs Seeker so thoroughly, so obviously, and so frequently. I could just bait it. Like there's so many times.
I think you baited me when we played.
Oh yeah, I probably did. Like I baited everyone. It was great. I just like I don't know. I'll play this Arkham's Astrolabe. And they're like spell stutter sprite that. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll play these 2 Ardent recruits. They have Metalcraft. Go ahead.
And the thing is, like from the Jeskai side, unless there's a very specific like problem, you kind of just have to take the value when you can get it. You're not really in a position to pick and choose. You just want to get it into play and start attacking, or have it to ephemerate, or have it in play so you have the second one's better. You're not going to sit around, so you have the luxury of playing that Court Homunculus first. I think that's probably exactly what happened.
Yeah, they baited with a Court Homunculus.
If not, yeah, that's probably what it was.
You mentioned the flow state, right? And that was kind of to tie back to the conversation that we were having just before we started recording. I would love for you to share that same fantastic observations, right, about how you sort of achieve that flow state by taking care of the machine, to quote you.
Right. So I was dealing with minor injury, minor illness the last couple of weeks, and I was kind of just resting. And my Pauper game was not particularly good. I started out both challenges 2 Sundays in a row, I think 2-0 or 3-0, and then as the day progressed, I kind of fell apart. As I was saying a little bit earlier, these Pauper games, especially Jeskai, are super grindy, super long. There's really no room for any mistakes, and you have to be focused, and you have to maintain that flow state. Like flow being essentially you're drowning out all distractions, and your entire universe is this game in front of you. And when you're nagged by your aching knee or your aching tooth or what have you, or you didn't get enough sleep, or you're thirsty, or your stomach's growling, that takes away from that a lot. It's hard to achieve flow. Or another problem, if this is a problem for me, if you're double queuing, I don't know, I'd be curious to watch like some brain scan of me when I'm single queuing versus double queuing, but I imagine it is not pretty. I imagine it'd be some really cool like brain information. Like I wonder like if even maybe each half is like 45, it probably doesn't even add up to 100. I imagine like there's probably like some negative synergies, and it's just it can be a mess. Sometimes it's great, and it works out if you're playing like playing vintage and commander 1-game matches or something. But like playing Teamer Delver and Jeskai Snow, you're not hitting any flow states, and you're not gonna win if you even have the time. So keeping the machinery just being healthy, making sure you get sleep, eating right. I actually have like a routine. I get kind of an eating routine on Saturday and Sunday when I'm grinding challenges. I'll make a certain smoothie. Like during the week I make like a protein shake, but actually on the weekends before tournaments I'll have a different smoothie. It's just like fruit, and it's just more like for energy. And I eat constantly through the day, and I'll like stretch and work out between rounds, and just really I had like a good week or a good event a couple weeks ago. I was reading between rounds and just really trying to just think of it as like a mental athlete. It's an e-sport, trying to embrace that. I stand when I'm playing as well. Like right now I'm standing at my desk. I don't sit. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I found that the only time I didn't, and maybe I'm being a little results oriented, maybe it didn't have so much to do with terrible matchups at all, which it really did, but I was going to draw a parallel that really wasn't there. But the only time I've never cashed in the challenge, I was laying in bed. I was just like lazy mode. I just had like my whole setup to where I was just laying down in bed with the mouse in there, and it's super comfy. And then I went 1-3 drop because I ran into a lot of bad matchups. I don't think it had anything to do with that at all now that I think about it. But I probably didn't play well either.
Well, yeah, especially if you broke your routine. Like if you actually got into a habit of that, maybe it'd be better. I've actually heard that, who knows, it could just be like I have no idea on the actual science. I think this was like some maybe like some Ayurvedic like book by a Swami. Basically, it said that laying down is actually better than sitting, just with your blood flow, and it just kind of makes sense. Maybe laying down is actually not bad. I think you should kind of explore that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know that when I used to play online poker, when we had breaks in the tournaments, which were for 5 minutes at the 55-minute mark of every hour, I used to get up and walk around. Might have done some shadow boxing. But, I've definitely incorporated that into I've definitely created previous routines for what is essentially an e-sport. If you're going to play something all day and expect to do well in that throughout the entire day, I think it's a good thing that you have going over there with the standing, with the having a little bit of motion, with the active brain. Maybe helps you be more present in your plays, be a bit more in the moment.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Yeah, I think that's probably a good observation for sure. Ties in with flow, being super present, not distracted.
So I've almost completely forgotten to ask you what got you started into Pauper in the first place, but I do know you've kind of been here since the beginning of Pauper.
Yeah, so what what got me into it was Magic Online because it was a format. I used to like play there was a Vanguard format on Magic Online. I would just play anything that had tournaments. I don't remember if Pauper had like actual tournaments or if it was just leagues. Basically, I have memories of grinding leagues, 2010 era, way back when it was a fledgling thing, playing like in Sackland, Storm, like Invasion Lands. And probably what got me into it was just there was some like profit. It was a grind and it was fun. Like it was just a super fun, like different, unique thing. It was kind of more like thing about Pauper that people who don't play it don't realize is it's like playing Legacy. It's not some underpowered thing. It's actually it really harkens back to a previous time, which I guess back then isn't why I got into it, but now is kind of why it's enjoyable. Like, there's no planeswalkers. I think I was telling you, there's not that same. And Pauper doesn't feel like the game gets run away as much. It feels like you can always be in it. You can never really scoop because you can always hit that Muldrifter, hit that Gush, or hit the Thraben Inspector. And there's no Dreadhard Arcanus or Narset or something that just you will win if you untap with it. But I think what really got me into it was brewing. I just really remember having so much fun. It just seemed like I've never been a brewer. I always net deck. Even to this day, my try and true strategy for these challenges is just like copy what won the week before. Or like if someone like top 8s 2 or 3 weeks in a row, I'll look at their deck. That's literally what happened this weekend with my win. I noticed someone had really good results. They were onto something. But back early days of Pauper, it was just Wild West, and I remember I recreated like a Magnivore land destruction I have nowhere deck that I enjoyed, and
I remember that as a standard deck.
yeah, it was like my favorite standard deck way back when in like Champions of Kamigawa, and I remade that as a Pauper deck. I don't know how good it was, but it was fun and just weird. You just do really weird brewing, and honestly to this day that's still the case. I'm not someone who talks a lot about like bans and stuff. I just kind of play what there is, and I will say that like I want bands that would promote the ability to do brewing and stuff. So something like Astrolabe does kind of force decks down a certain down a certain route, so it restricts options. But on the other hand, I do enjoy brewing around these powerful cards, playing alternate decks. Like in the challenge last weekend, we played Red White Aggro, which played Astrolabe and Hawk and a lot of these cards, but you took it to super extreme by using Ardent Recruit and Court Homunculus, these cards that haven't really seen play, but now because of Astrolabe, they can see play. So like in that sense, Astrolabe's cool. And literally while I was in the middle of playing you, I was already probably not present brewing because I wanted to cast Trinket Mage in your deck. And I have a brew of like a Jeskai Trinket Mage aggro deck because I really want to Trinket Mage for Court Homunculus.
I do know that you love Trinket Mage because we sat around discussing all the sweet things that you can get with Trinket Mages back in 2010 when we were coming home from Grand Prix Nashville. So I think you've liked Trinket Mage for a really long time. You even made a point to play with them in your Jeskai deck in the Pauper Premier League, which you got second in. Can you tell me about that experience, the Pauper Premier League experience? What was that like?
Yeah, it was super fun to just be a part of that sort of thing. Like when I got approached about it, I was thrilled about the idea, and the thing is, I really took it a casual approach to it. Like I was in no way was competitive. I really was not competitively minded. I was like, okay, I'm gonna play the Jeskai deck. It was kind of when the Jeskai came out. So my first week, I was like, okay, I'm gonna play this because that's what I've been playing, and it is a spiky deck, but it is what it is, and I just played it and 3-0, and that was cool. And then the next week, like I kind of didn't wasn't like testing Pauper, and the next time I had to play, I wasn't gonna run back the Jeskai deck. Like I wanted to bring something to with diversity. I didn't know what to play, and I really just I was clueless, and I was like that I was supposed to submit my deck, and I was like looking at leagues, just looking for something, and I'm like thinking about registering Teamer Tron, like I gotta find something better than that. And then I came across the Tireless Tribe deck, which I had played previously, like maybe last year. I just like randomly picked up and got like top 4 or final the challenge. I knew I could handle the deck, and like if this deck's back legal, maybe I could run it. And it had the tireless. It had Nomad and Core combo, which is like kind of clunky and awkward, and only one tireless tracker. It didn't have the tech of a whiteout yet. And I just said, okay, I'm going to run it. I kind of just got some dream matchups. I got Stompy, which seemed pretty good. Played against Teamer Tron, which was close to a bye as it could get because the matchup is just so lopsided. And something like that, I was on to the finals just based on the structure. I was in the final. I ended up losing the next round to Jeskai Snow. But it was just so amazing to just play this deck that I chose for fun. Literally, after I submitted it, I was like anxious, like hoping I could win one match and actually, make it to the playoffs and not just throw away my 3-0, and then to just kind of crush it was just really fun. And then I made it to the finals, and I had to set up play against Demars versus Chris Van Meter. I ended up bringing back the new and improved Tireless Tribe deck with whiteout. Basically, I was at that point I was not confident in Snow versus Tron. I think it was probably Hellsow was like crushing at that time, and like Damar's list was basically that. And I was just not into that matchup, so I registered the tribe deck, figuring I just have that in my pocket to meet Demar's Tron deck, and then I'll just manage with Jeskai against Van Meter's decks. Van Meter beat Demar's, which wasn't great for my deck selection, but was fine, and then I ended up getting smashed. It's not at my best game.
Well, obviously Twitch chat, right? Well, obviously, I mean, maybe one day we can all play as well as Twitch chat plays. People in the Discords as well, basically everywhere, was really dogging on your lines. And the thing is, I remember seeing you set up a turn to take away the Monarch from Mono Black with Spell Stutter, where you let Gary resolve. You didn't even scred Gary with its trigger on the stack for that value, which is, something that happens frequently where people take that value to not take any life loss to Gary, just so you can have Ephemerate up, just so that you could ephemerate your own Spell Stutter sprite if you went to defile it in the end step. Like, just so that you could steal the Monarchy. I remember I still remember that play. That play was sweet. And so, it was hilarious to me watching that and having random people in the chat being like, I don't think Adam knows what he's doing. It's like, no, you're a genius. Adam has no idea what he's doing. You know what I mean? Like, specifically, the one play that had both Twitch chat and the Discord up in arms was you not casting Inside Out on Thermo Alchemist against Burn when you had mulliganed so low. And the only two people that backed you up on that play were myself and Burbman, aka Entropy 263. So we were both like, well, yeah, Adam has to draw like runner, maybe runner perfect to win this game. That's one of the combo pieces he can't throw it away. You know what I mean? Like, he can't just use that as value removal.
Yeah, this is making me regretful. Yeah, honestly, I probably agree. Like, I think I did play pretty much awful through the whole final, and they're probably no, like, I think that what I said is that I was not on my A game. I was not in flow. I think I was like, usually I'm like listening to music when I play. Wasn't listening to music because I was like listening to the person running the league like thing, and just was not in, just a little bit, just everything a little bit was late, super late at night. Just like everything was not everything is basically everything brought me to play my C game. Like when last Sunday, I'm at my A+ game, crushing it. Like during that final, I was like in my D game, just absolute. Yeah, no, I actually won't even want to watch it because it's just like one day I need to actually go and look at some lines. Like I can even think of different lines, but like every single game was just obviously the luck didn't work out either. Like I think I mulliganed 4 once. Maybe I should have kept the 7. I don't know, but yeah, no, that was just me playing bad, and it doesn't really it sucks because it sounds like people were really like getting into it, and I wish I would have put on a better game. Yeah, no, I was pretty disappointed that I didn't bring.
I think you're being a little. I think you're being a little hard on yourself, man. If you rewatch those matches, your opponent had the goods quite frequently. I, in fact, burst out laughing numerous occasions because you would claw your way back into these games, and then CVM would just top deck Sign in Blood or like top deck Crip Rats. Or there's a couple different situations that were just like, oh, Adam found his way back in this game. It's like, oh, no, not anymore. He didn't.
There were a couple moments, I think, in probably like that Ephemerate spell starter game where like I realized that I had to like claw back, where I felt myself against the corner. Like there were a couple spots where I was happy with how I navigated back. So I agree with you. There were some spots where I turned it around to playing good, but for the most part, like as I was saying, it's a battle of myself and like just bringing my A game. That's what it's about. Like when I'm actually playing my best, really good, but it's Magic isn't, to me, it's not about that. It's about getting myself to where I can play at that level. It's not about necessarily about practice or this or that. It's literally about the machine, about controlling myself. So like I try to see past, like if they're getting lucky, like that's great. I want to be able to win despite them getting lucky because I just played so well, like playing around the different things as opposed to not just.
I understand that internal struggle with yourself where you're like, well, I butchered that, and it's a terrible thing when you realize that. I mean, it's good to acknowledge that, and it's good to learn from it, ideally. But I know that feelings like where you're like, oh, I butchered that. Yeah, I suck. And getting to a point where you avoid that, I totally agree with. When I go and I play disc golf, I don't want to just make one putt. I don't want to make one good putt. I want to make all of my putts. I don't care how many of them need to be good, where I need to make, a 35-foot thing to save a par. I don't want to focus on how I found myself in that situation. I just want to step up and do it. And I want to do it 100% of the time. So I understand that mentality and that drive. I think that leads a lot of people to success in various fields because they don't like the feeling of failure. They don't like feeling the loss. But mainly, more importantly, they don't like it when it's self-inflicted, right? When you shot yourself in the foot, when you did something to end the game for yourself. That's truly the worst.
If you get super unlucky and you maul the 4, whatever, like that sucks, but it's hard to be too mad because that's just what we signed up for, playing cards. But when you see the line, when you actually mess up and you let the minute, that's when you can be mad because the whole point is to play well, right? Don't want to make mistakes. It's like just getting the wrong answer or whatever. The whole point is to just make all the right decisions. And then actually, furthermore, my favorite Magic article I've ever read, Pierre Dagan, and he I think it was on Haruya, and basically it's like Magic the Puzzling or something like that. I could maybe link it in the show notes. Basically, he says it's not about making all the right decisions, it's about seeing all the spots where there is a decision to be made. So you have to go farther than just making the right plays. You actually have to see where there are plays to be made. And essentially, there are so many of these little decisions being made throughout a whole game that people aren't seeing. So many of them are obvious. We make the right play, but there's a lot that people don't see. And I think that comes up a lot in these super grindy Pauper type games. Just like little sequencing things and just so many things, just all these subtle things, like fighting over a lot of times it's fighting over the details, like when you're brainstorming or, countering this, or just using all the information out there and seeing all the times when you actually have a decision to make. It's like some weird choose your own adventure.
Yeah, I think that's one of the beautiful things about Pauper is that there are so many of those over the course of the game because our games go longer, right? Modern to turn 4 format. One of the last games I ever played a vintage, I mulliganed down to 0 and then I won on turn 1. It's a true story. I top deck Bazaar of Baghdad, obviously. Yeah. That's why I was mulliganing to 0 in the first place, right? The story makes a lot of sense now. That stuff like that doesn't happen in Pauper, right? There's no turn 1 wins. There's no like, oh, I have this card so you can't win because I have this card. There's a lot of Magic to be played and there's a lot of opportunities for mistakes from both players, as well as opportunities to, take things constantly to the next level and play around this. What if he has this and this? Well, that, all sorts of small situations like that. A previous guest used the term micro advantages. So Pauper is a format of micro advantages because there really aren't blowouts. And I think that's one of the things that's made me stay with Pauper. Would you think that is that fair for you? Is that one of the reasons that's kept you around is the depth of play?
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% echo what you're saying about the ability to the play. I also think, to expand on what you said, the ability to make mistakes, make good decisions, also to recover from the mistakes, the ability to, like I was saying in the Pauper final, there was a game where I knew I'd made mistakes and I was behind, but I saw, an opportunity to climb back in. So the ability to grind back, that the micro advantages, that is really cool. I'll have to listen to that because that is not exactly, but essentially exactly how I think about it. I think of it as, because you brought up vintage too. Pauper is limit hold'em. Vintage is no limit hold'em. You described like dying to one card and in vintage. I actually love that. I freaking love that. It is so fun to me to win these games on turn one or lose on turn one. You have to be ready for the swings. Some players, even professionals, they can't handle the swings of vintage. The old Rounders quote. You have to be to know you're going to commit your day and maybe just get smashed by whatever. But it's also exhilarating, and because other people can't handle it either, if you can handle it better than them, you can just go all in on whatever. Just keep that stone face, and then it resolves. And yes, that's awesome. Whereas in Pauper, it's not like that. It's decision, micro advantage, grind. I was talking to someone about it. Like you can't get there's not a lot of ways to pull ahead. It's like you have to grind for every card. Like you can like give up a card early in the game, but then turn 15 they win by that one card. But you also like can't give up. Like so often, like we've been trained to just scoop because like they resolve the Jace or whatever. Pauper, that doesn't happen. Maybe they ephemerate the Muldrifter or hit the Tron or something, or they slam the Ethereal Armor. There's powerful things, but for the most part, you're fighting over these micro advantages. You're doing it one bet at a time, one little vintage. You're putting your whole stack, your whole game, like on one card. One turn, one decision. Whereas in Pauper, you're building a stack of chips slowly, grind. A lot of times in Pauper games, I'll look and I'll like, okay, I'm up by 2 cards. I'm up by 1 card. Like I'm 1 Muldrifter ahead, and I'll kind of keep track of like my position that way. I actually like count the permanents in our hand, kind of get a sense of who has a bigger stack right now. How can they get their stack bigger? Have to play around that. Mostly it's just don't let them get more cards. Don't let them Muldrifter. Don't let them ephemerate Muldrifter. That's like the one like of Pauper right now. That's what feels like the combo. Like the powerful whatever equivalent of another format. The Muldrifter ephemerate 4 mana. Draw 4 cards. Have a Muldrifter. Then you draw 2 more cards. So that's kind of what the game revolves around. And then on the other side, you just have grinding out with Skyfishers and stuff. So that's kind of what brought me to my build with 2 Glint Hawk, 2 trinkets. You have a little bit extra value in there, but you're not completely reliant on Astrolabe like a 4 Glint Hawk deck.
So I played that Trinket Mage deck you sent me, by the way. I played a league with it.
Did you? I mean, I literally put together, didn't like really go deep on the mana. How did it work out?
The mana's terrible. The mana is truly bad, but I also cut Thoughtcasts. I think I played 2 of them. But I played Porcelain Legionnaires instead. The reason being the guy who got the Metalcraft list published last Wednesday. So it's sort of my timeline in this last week, right? It's Wednesday today, the 16th. Last Wednesday, a 5.0 list got published for Metalcraft. And I thought, that looks fun, and that also looks like I can finish a league the same day I start it, because I cannot do that with Jeskai. Leagues take 2 days for me, or 2 evenings, right, after work.
Yeah, I can't even imagine playing a league, a Pauper league. I don't play leagues. I can't imagine grinding that out.
Yeah, especially the deck like Jeskai, where it just takes forever to play. Yeah, so I did not do that anymore. Yeah, and I was like, oh, this list looks fun. It looks like I can finish a league. So I go 4-1 with it, my first league. And then the next day at work, I think a little bit about what I liked, what I didn't like, change the sideboard a little, go home, get another 4-1, right? Then I get another 4-1. So, yeah, and they're taking no time at all. They take like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to finish a league with Boros Metalcraft. And the deck's good. I actually got in 25 matches between Thursday night and Sunday morning playing Boros Metalcraft before the challenge. It's a fun deck to play. It's not exactly simple. There are some nuances to it, and you can play your matches very quickly. So that's what attracted it to me for this weekend, was that I didn't want to grind out super long games with Jeskai. I didn't want to put my mental machine to the test. I wanted fewer decisions, I guess.
Yeah, I know that feeling. That's awesome. But you're still not giving up that power, right? You're still playing Astrolabe and these broken things, these broken hawks. And yeah, no, it's awesome. It's cool to see that other direction of the deck. Like I've never been too like I've never really loved that like the Boros Monarch stuff. I played it like once and hated it. I've always been on the other side of it. But like the Metalcraft aggro, that's something that like is it's not a red white control deck. It's actually aggro. It fits like that. It fits that mental model I have.
Yeah, it's really aggro. What's really nice about the version that I played of Metalcraft is that I went with a full 4 of Bone Splitter.
Yeah, that wrecked me. Bone Splitter is so good.
It's so good against Jeskai because otherwise your core Skyfishers would be insane against my deck.
Yes. Well, so I was going through replays. Lily was going through replays, just looking through the action. And in our game, I noticed you had a board of like 5 creatures, and I had a Skyfisher, and I'm like, how do I win this game? Because it was a game that I won. And, obviously you didn't draw Bone Splitter. Just, yeah, Skyfisher, I've found that 3 toughness is so good versus so many decks. It holds off so much. It's truly, truly nuts.
Yeah, it blocks effectively against every threat in my deck except for Ardent Recruit with Metalcraft.
And that's why Ardent Recruit really stands out, right? It's wild and the coddle. It's actually a level above. It's like a Carapace Forger, right? It's big. I'd say it's better. It is a nasty card, and definitely, if it is consistently a 3/3, it is a Pauper staple. So it's cool that this deck actually enables that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a Pauper stable. I don't actually know how good this deck is. It's just fun to play. Like, I caught a lot of people off guard, and my inclusion of Bone Splitter was a good one. But I don't know if this deck's actually that great. Like, this deck's, it's good. I don't know if it's great.
So my idea, after playing you, was just to add Trinket Mage, and just somehow, like, basically my thought was maybe instead of playing 4 Bone Splitters, you can just play like 1 Trinket Mage for it, play some other stuff, then you can grind a little bit. It's just my thought. So like I said, I like to brew Pauper, so I want to do some brewing. My thought was maybe I need some more. It just needs Prophetic Prism to help the mana. So how did it go when you played it?
Yeah, so I played a league with the list that you sent me. I went 3-2. I beat Burn, I beat Stompy, and then I beat Burn again. And I think I lost to Jeskai, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I lost to.
That sounds like a pretty good outing for a first draft, a rough first draft.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. I don't think that, I mean, I'm not sure. You might need Prism in your deck with the whole Trinket Mage theme that's going on, which Trinket Mage was like ridiculously strong against Burn. As weird as that is, just because it went and got Navigator's Compass.
Yeah, Navigator's Compass is so good.
Yeah, and then you just never play your Hawks and your core Skyfishers. You just wait to draw Trinket Mage and then get the Navigator's Compass and then start playing all of them. Yeah, that deck destroys Burn. I'll tell you that much about the deck that you sent me. And those Prismatic Strands, they're really good against Stompy as well.
Okay, yeah, how were those? So my thought was that the deck that those might just have to be like Prism because you need an artifact in that slot if you're going to realistically play Thoughtcast. So maybe you just cut Thoughtcast and play the Strands. But I know Bilster, who's like my Pauper mentor, kind of, he loves Prismatic Strands. Maybe he's like my Pauper hero. I don't know. I just went back. So like I said, my strategy through the Pro Tour, Magic, through pretty much my career is just through now and to Pauper, just copy what wins net deck. Let other people do the work, and then I can play it. And then once I understand it, then I can like tune a little bit and improve it. And I remember when I was like around probably a year ago when the challenges heated up and I was playing more, I saw this guy Bilster was always crushing tournaments. And then I found out later that he was actually my friend who I knew in real life, and just talked about it. And he just continues to just impress me with his crushing these events consistently. The consistency is impressive.
I think of Bilster as my Pauper nemesis right now. And the reason for that is, well, going back historically when I first started playing Pauper and I was just grinding slivers until I had enough ticks from chests that I could buy blue-red Delver, which I eventually did buy blue-red Delver and go properly infinite, but, I grinded slivers to get there.
That's a classic Pauper origin story of just Pauper to Prince, right? Just buying in on the cheapest format and grinding your way up. It's so honest. It's so great. It's just so good. It's just such a good learning experience, right? Like that made you good because you're really just fighting for your survival. You're fighting with a handicap.
Well, it helped me get back into the swing of things pretty quick after my 6 or 7 year break. Still not as good of a player today as I was then, but it's such a less important part of my life now that it's only to be expected. But yeah, I think of Bilster, well, historically, like I said, as the guy whose name I didn't want to see back when I was like just a random guy grinding slivers. Be like,
And he does grind. He's to this day, I know he does grind leagues.
and I'm just like, oh God, it's Bilster, I lose, for so many months starting out. It's like, oh, it's Bilster, oh, I lose. You know what I mean? Like, and now I get excited when I see Bilster because I'm like, oh, it's going to be a good game. But guess what? The last 2 times I played Bilster, we're in the top 4 of things. And both times I mulliganed to 5 in game 3.
Oh, you played him in the playoff top 4 too, didn't you?
Yeah, and I played him, oh, actually, no, I played him once in between then. I played him a week later after the Pauper playoff. We were on the same exact list, beat him 2-0 when it didn't matter.
All right. Well, yeah, so if you mulligan like that, it's like upsetting, but it's hard to be too mad, I guess.
Oh, I'm not mad at Bilster. I'm just saying he's my nemesis. I want to keep 7 against the guy. I want to play a great game of Magic. Like, because he's one of the guys that I see now, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a great game. And then I'm just getting denied it because I'm getting mulligan to 5 and I'm not getting a great game. I don't care if he wins. Like, I just want a great game, and he's definitely one of the best players out there. And I think that I don't think anyone would really argue with me about that. It's interesting that you know him in real life.
Yeah, which I didn't know that he was a Pauper grinder. Yeah, no, they're from upstate New York, and they're grinders. They play a lot of limited. They're like limited players too, which is also why it was kind of surprising that he just grinds Pauper every Sunday. He actually takes off his job. Like it is like the highlight of his week. That's why he crushes it. He cares.
He's usually ahead of the curve himself.
Yeah, no, yeah, he always like has some tech or like he's like he's networked with some strong players, huh?
Yeah, no, that's just it. Is I think that there's some other times where he is able to tap in because I know that the build of Jeskai he's playing was made by Kung Fu Trees, well, originally, and then he played Bilster in a league. Bilster asked him about it. KFT sends him the list. The very next weekend, Bilster's in the top 8 with that list. So from there, he made it his own, certainly. It was just interesting how the story of Pauper develops, where this player played this player and this happened, and like this guy knew this guy and then this happened. Like,
or like it'd be funny, like I'm gonna work on this Trinket Mage deck, like I played you and then just got inspired, which was brew. And I feel like Pauper is kind of somewhat small enough community, like a small enough group of people playing for relatively low enough stakes. Like it's not being super scrutinized by everyone. Even it is actually. It sounds like like Pauper Discord and just anywhere there in these little communities there are these serious developments, but there's a room to do that. Just also because the card pool is so big, like you can actually innovate. You see people innovate in different ways. There's no like I always say like I truly believe that you could probably play just about any build of Jeskai and win. I'm not actually sure it matters what cards you play in Jeskai, just that you play them correctly.
Yeah, it's tough to build Jeskai wrong. That's been a observation I've had this league, this metagame, really ever since the printing of Arkham's Astrolabe. It's been very, very difficult to build Jeskai wrong.
Really, my favorite thing is to the night before the event, and then sometimes in the morning too, like before a challenge, is to just tune, just go back and I'll like before this Sunday I had like 3 or 4 weeks of challenge lists, looking back and just kind of looking at trends and the metagame and just look for tech and sideboards. And then I look at my deck list and just kind of tune here and there and just slightly adjust to my liking. And when it works out, it just feels great. That's a lot of fun. once you really understand the deck.
It's nice to get it right. I think that there's a lot of rewards there to be found when you're in tune with the metagame, when you truly understand what's going on. Those little subtle adjustments, especially a deck with Jeskai that has to take on some different roles in its different matchups, usually control, but how it does that, whether it's controlling the battlefield, whether it's getting into counter wars, whether it comes down to card advantage, there's some beautiful play in those little tweaking nuances. For example, going back to the Bilster conversation, where he and KFT were running, is it Reign of Revelation? It's a draw four, or sorry, it's a 4-mana draw spell. It's at instant speed. You draw 3, discard 1. They started playing that because they discovered in the Jeskai mirror, you wanted to land, whoever landed the Ephemerate combo first won. Didn't matter if it was the Mauldrifter side or the Archaeomancer side. As long as you slam that into play, you win the game. Problem is, the other guy's not tapping out, so you can't either. So you just sit there and play draw go for like 8-10 turns. So they figured out, well, why don't we just run some instant speed card draw? Because the entire game is focused on resolving these sorcery speed things. Let's force people to interact with us, or let's amass a ton of advantage. And one of the beauties of Reign of Revelation is it discards your prismatic strands, allowing you to just run out the core Skyfisher or whatever, something they're not going to fight over. And then 2 turns from now, that is protecting your Archaeomancer or your Mauldrifter from getting lightning bolted.
That is sick. And it's kind of like a brainstorm effect in general, just gets rid of something. And then the other beauty of that list is they had a bunch of bounce lands and cycle lands, because the whole point was you don't want to miss a land drop.
Yeah, that's been a thing for those 2 guys on that list for almost a month now, I think.
Bounce lands are the norm, yeah. Cycling lands are not. Yeah, he was on 3 Chancery last weekend. I was on 2. It was amazing. I could see 3. He was on 4 at one point. He also uses Thraben Inspector, that's the Kung Fu Trees tech that I've not played, but it seems pretty awesome. The Journey to Nowhere innovation was kind of interesting. You actually kind of reinvigorated. I was getting kind of frustrated with Jeskai, like not enjoying it, getting into some of the problems of just not having the right focus as well, not playing right. And then you showed me your idea, which was 4 Scrad, 4 Lightning Bolt, and some Journeys main. So I played that the last 2 weeks, and that was strong. And I think I could have put up a result if I was playing better. But that's kind of...
I don't know if I want to take full credit for that. My original idea, if you go back, I don't play the challenge every week, right? You play the challenge every week. I usually don't play the challenge unless I think I'm onto something, which is why, I've cashed 9 out of 10 times. And, my top 8 conversion rate right now is 4 out of 10 as well. So, I usually don't play unless I think I'm onto something, right? That's my secret to success in challenges.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Pick your battles.
Exactly, yeah. So last time I thought I was onto something, I took 30 seconds because I thought Echoing Decay was going to be the answer to River Boas and such. And Echoing Decay is pretty good against River Boa, unless it's already a problem. If it's already a problem, Echoing Decay is not going to do anything, right? But it occurred to me, that was actually week 2 of the Pauper Players podcast, where I interviewed Paulo, and we spoke about Brazil, which is a fantastic episode if you haven't had the opportunity to listen to it yet, although we did touch on some subjects that I was not prepared to talk about that day. It is absolutely worth listening to. I digress. The guy who won the challenge that day, where we talked about it, I took 32nd. Paulo took, I think his 5th that week. Anyway, the guy who won with Jeskai had Journey to Nowhere main deck, and just one of them and 2 more in the sideboard. And I realized, that's clearly a much more elegant solution to the River Boa problem. It handles River Boa at all stages in the River Boa's life, right? Whether it's got a Hunger the Hell Pack attached to it, whether it's got an Elephant Guide attached to it. More so than that, it answers a Tog, it answers Mono White Heroic, just the entire deck struggles against Journey to Nowhere.
But then the other thing, and then I don't know, so I wanted to actually ask you if this ever came up, and I thought maybe this was like part of the reason that people were getting really grindy, but Journey to Nowhere technically gives you a little bit more play with core Skyfisher. You can turn it into removal. You can play if you have a Skyfisher in play and you play Journey to Nowhere, put the trigger on the stack, response, you ephemerate your Skyfisher. Skyfisher comes into play, you bounce Journey, then the exile trigger targets, then the return resolves, then the exile resolves and the creature's permanently removed. And you have Journey in your hand. And then you replay it. Now, of course, really for it to work, you have to, basically the creature under Journey is going to return, so you can basically switch the creature under it, and then replay it to get it back. Or you can also, it's cool against Naked Journeys when they like sack it in response, something in response or whatever. So I was like wondering if that really is a thing. And in my experience, it is not. I haven't really looked for it. I haven't played with Journey a lot. Yeah, I assumed it probably didn't. It's so corner case, but it is a very real thing in like a super late game situation. The thing is, if you ever have like, you can kind of do that when you're comboed with Archaeomancer, but you're probably just going to be better off getting Scred. But it is a corner case and it's a cool thing. I just wonder who out, if like someone out there is doing that.
Well, what I think is interesting is this gives us an opportunity to talk about just core Skyfisher in general in the Jeskai deck. And what I feel like most people don't understand about core Skyfisher is how good it is in Jeskai. It shines in Jeskai. It's good in other decks, but it shines in Jeskai. Most people just see core Skyfisher and think, oh, it picks up Astrolabe, and that's an issue. I know that I've seen a couple different places where people are like, we could not ban Astrolabe and we could ban core Skyfisher. That might solve the problem. But the thing is, if you're picking up Arkham's Astrolabe with your core Skyfishers and Jeskai, and it's after like turn 4, you're probably making a mistake because there are so many good targets to pick up. Because you can get back Spell Stutter sprites if you play them. You can get back Muldrifters, which you do play. You can just run out an Archaeomancer and get a Scred something, get back your Archaeomancer.
Yeah, it all comes up. And then Bilster with his 3-bit inspectors. I found that pretty much any time where I'm returning lands in a desperation type thing is not where you want to be. It's a complete desperation. I think I actually may have I was thinking did I do that in the Pauper Premier League at all? I might have had to. But yeah, return mine too. But yeah, in the challenge, I definitely bounced a Spell Stutter at one spot. Yeah, no, I had an opponent bounce an Archaeomancer. I believe I bounced a Muldrifter. There's some good stuff. The best is bouncing Navigator's Compass, right?
Well, if you're playing Burn, yeah, that is a pretty good fill. But yeah, in like the Metalcraft deck, core Skyfisher doesn't work that way at all. It plays an entirely different role, where I'm bouncing back lands almost always, because the deck only plays 18, and so it makes it a 1-drop threat on a turn where I would normally miss my land drop.
Yeah, you're not trying to grind out so much. You're trying to just tempo and kill them.
Just trying to put bodies into play, put Bone Splitters on those bodies, and swing.
Whereas in like Jeskai, we were saying earlier, it's a crazy wall. It just blocks. Like it might as well be Wall of Denial. Actually, better because it has power. It's like Baneslayer Angel. It just shuts down the battlefield.
Yeah, core Skyfisher is incredible in Jeskai. It really is. It's really... It truly shines in that deck.
And then, heck, you have Bilster who uses Prismatic Strands with it just to get a little more out of it.
Well, Prismatic Strands is pretty well positioned with all the Stompy running around. I know I played some in my sideboard this week for that matchup. Also works against just random decks, like Mono Blue Delver for people, or Burn, same category of people who are stubbornly playing last year's decks. Prismatic Strands is incredible against all those decks. So, yeah, Strands is a really sweet one. I'm glad I put some in my sideboard.
I guess it might be okay. It looks like Affinity top 8 might be okay versus a Tog and Flame. Maybe you can use it.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I don't know if it's good against Affinity in general, though, because they have so many, like, colorless beaters. Yeah, I know in the Trinket Mage list that you sent me, I don't think Prismatic Strands belongs in that main deck.
Yeah, I'm sure it's more of a sideboard card, if anything. That was kind of filler.
Yeah, see, the reason it's so good in like the Bilster decks is it helps him protect his combo, and that he can discard it to Reign of Revelation in the mirror to really truly protect the combo. But I started with them in my main deck for Boros Metalcraft this last week, and I just put them all in the sideboard. Like, they're fantastic cards. I just don't want them in an aggro deck, really. You know what I mean?
But yeah, in certain matchups, it's sweet. It's like it's a 2-for-1. It actually is a 2-for-1.
Well, sometimes it can be more when Stompy sends its team into your team.
Yeah, for sure. I believe that.
So walk us through this win here, right? How many challenges have you won now? How many Pauper challenges have you won now?
Oh, I don't know. I don't keep track of that. I mean, I think I won maybe 2. I think I won 2 this year, and even last weekend. So Bilster scooped me in the finals because I wanted the Pauper points to try to get into the playoff, and he's queued. So
Bilster has Pauper points to spare, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that too. So he gave me the glory. So the win, trying to grind out my treasure chests. Yeah, it was definitely a success. I mean, I swept through eight rounds. So to walk through it was me frustrated of kind of losing with Jeskai and like kind of ready to just give up and play the 4 Glinthawk the Trinket Mage, 2 Prophetic Prism, the one like STI, I think, won or maybe like top or seconded with or something a couple weeks ago. Just that deck, the deck that's been around. But so the problem with that deck is that it is inherently inconsistent because the Jeskai deck is already super reliant on Astrolabe, and Skyfisher is really an awkward draw when you don't have it in the early game. And when you have Glinthawk, it is truly a dead draw. So you're when you're playing that deck, you're essentially you're pretty much mulliganing into Astrolabe or hands with Preordain that also that have like removal and lands, like somewhat of a keepable hand. And sometimes you just miss, and it has a fail rate. On the other hand, when it works, Glinthawk is the best card in Pauper, and you're bouncing Astrolabe for 1 mana. So like when it works, Glinthawk and Astrolabe is the best combo. Glinthawk is better than Skyfisher when you have Astrolabe, but when you don't, it's awful. So, but it's kind of more straightforward. So I was thinking maybe I'll just try this and just play the higher variance, quicker deck, especially if I'm in double queue, whatever. But I also know that that's not really the best deck, and that I should probably just play the more traditional stable Jeskai and just play correctly. And then I was doing some research, and I came across this player, Mayon, M-A-I-A-On. I'm not sure who that is. Don't even really recognize him from events. But I noticed they EXO'd the Swiss last week, and I don't know what they finished. And then I noticed last week they got 9th. And then I looked back to the Pauper playoff. They got 9th. I've just seen them using this very similar list throughout all these times with 2 Glinthawk and 2 Trinket Mage. So here's the stack, it's a real Jeskai. It has a 4 Spell Stutters and Archaeomancers. It's a Jeskai, but you have this little tinge of the Glinthawk, and you have the Trinket. Instead of playing Prophetic Prism, which basically my biggest problem with that deck is you play the Prisms, so you can actually have a higher chance of Astrolabe, but it's just such like a bad card. It just sucks to cast a Prophetic Prism when they're like playing mono green aggro. Like you just can't. If you're ever casting a Prism on turn 2, can Stompy or like burn, then you're not winning. So this deck, you play the 2 Trinket Mages, which give you that extra access, but without the Prisms, because you only have the 2 Hawks. It just kind of, guerrilla math, I would call it. It just, you less Hawks, but you do have the extra enablers. And then I also love Trinket Mage. Going back to just the beginning of this deck, I've always my ideal Pauper deck in my mind has always been like a Cawblade Trinket Mage deck, but it's always sucked, like Squadron Hawk, Trinket Mage equipment type stuff. And now we have this deck, and it literally is like, if you look at my Magic Online file of the deck I won with, it's called Cawblade. So I always played with Bone Splitter in this deck, and then eventually it just became the Astrolabe's main. But it's kind of like crap. I stopped playing with Trinket Mage because people did, but I've always loved it. I should have just been playing with it the whole time. I know better. I love Trinket Mage. So then my sideboard, I have a Compass and a Spellbomb for a little more access. So basically, I looked at Mayon's list and essentially copied the most recent list, except they were on 3 Preordained, so I can't stand by that. So I cut a Journey to Nowhere that they had for the 4th Preordain, and then I tuned up the sideboard a little bit. But I can just tell that this person knew what they were doing. Like I saw it in the mana. Like I realized the mana was really tight with 1 Plains. You don't really ever need a Plains with this deck, because when you're casting Skyfishers and Hawks, you're just bouncing the Astrolabe. So you have Astrolabe, so you just need the 1 for the Ephemerate, and sometimes just a 2 or 4, whatever. But like the 2 Mountains, which you actually want to draw, the 1 Great Furnace to go with the Trinket Mage. But all this looked very tight to me. And then I tightened up the sideboard a little bit to my liking, and then that was all she wrote. But like this Mayon, they have a Ninja of the Deep Hours in their sideboard. They actually previously had a Okiba Gang Shinobi, but they went to this Ninja, and I actually almost played it on Sunday. How good does that seem against Tron? Like, just imagine versus Tron, just slamming that Ninja and seeing the blood just sink from their face to see them turn to a ghost. I cannot imagine the beating that is versus a deck like Tron, or even versus Mono Black, maybe even the Mirror. Probably not, maybe. Because any time you could get a piece of value from Ninja seems sweet. But I see it as just like a one-of to beat Tron, maybe. I've always wanted that card to beat Tron, but like Land Destruction doesn't work. So that Ninja, that's something to try if Tron was a problem. But I actually kind of did well versus Tron last weekend with 4 blasts on the board. And that's kind of the story of the deck. I ran through a couple of mirror matches, a couple of Tron decks, also the white Astrolabe Tron deck as well.
Oh, the old Bilster deck. That's totally That's totally Bolster's baby right there that he gave up on. I think it's interesting. Two things. One, we have basically the same process in that we latch onto something that we see is working, and then we tune it to what our understanding of the metagame is, as well as any cards that maybe are better suited to our styles of play.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of it is. So I actually thought of this earlier. How you said you pick your battle. Well, I said you pick your battles, but you've explained the process of you play when you're onto something and you know you have an advantage. You think you have an advantage, and that kind of ties into some feelings that I have of just you want to be confident in your deck. There's no worse feeling than like traveling, especially, and like having like not being confident in your deck. Like when, let's say you basically like if you were going to a pro tour and you like found out, okay, the best players like this best team, here's their deck. You would go and you here's a deck list, here's a card, you can play it, and like you're, let's say that you've tested everything, you're confident in this deck. You would be so confident, right? You'd be going to that tournament. Nothing's gonna stop me but myself. I have the best deck. If you go in there with like a dud, like you bring a deck and then you find out, oh no, like the metagame is super against you, you're gonna have a defeatist attitude. That's kind of evolved to like, I'm not gonna play Celestial Flare. Like, yeah, maybe this guy has Celestial Flare and he can do some work with it, but I'm not about to just jam that in my sideboard. I'll play something that I have a little more experience with.
Yeah, that sideboard in question does have a lot of one-ofs.
And yeah, so did mine. He had two Seeker of the Way. But like previous weeks, he had Lone Missionary. And in my experience, Lone Missionary is the card I want there. So like I didn't play his Seeker of the Ways. I played the Lone Missionary. And I didn't play Swirling Sandstorm. I found Swirling Sandstorm kind of gets in the way of your Archaeomancer plan. And it just is too slow. So I didn't play that. But I did kind of like the one on Philosophy. I'm thinking I don't ever want to draw two Standard Bearers. So let's play one of those. I added a Gorilla Shaman because I saw like some new Witching Well Affinity decks, and also, of course, your red-white aggro deck. So going forward, I assume we're going to see more of the red-white, especially since you top 8'd and people will copy it. So Gorilla Shaman in there.
Maybe. That'll be interesting, because the philosophy of this podcast is to speak with the players who are shaping the metagame. So that'd be so fantastic if I could have a little bit of say in that. But you know what's the other interesting thing, where I said previously there's two interesting things. The first being that we have the same process. So the other thing that's interesting is that you and I gave up on my Jeskai deck at the same time. And you went with a better metagame for the challenge Jeskai, and I went with a completely different deck entirely in Boros Metalcraft, because up to that point we were playing the combo version of Jeskai, the more controlling, the more suited to the late game, do not have Glint Hawks. Only creature that's ever going to attack is Core Skyfisher. I have 7 or 8 red elemental blasts in my sideboard type of Jeskai.
Like control. You were probably beating up on aggro decks in the leagues.
Well, it was a little different. The metagame did definitely shift. When I had that deck and I was having success with that deck, I would play Stompy twice every league. So I had to come up with a way to beat that. Well, the way to beat Stompy is to have 10 removal spells in your main deck and not 4 copies of Counterspell, because Counterspell is not a good card against Stompy. You want either Dispels, they're much better against Stompy, or Spellstutter Sprite's also much better against Stompy. So it's just so interesting how quickly the metagame's been shifting in Pauper the last few months, and it's usually with just different iterations of Jeskai for the most part. What are your thoughts on how fast the meta has been moving lately?
Well, I mean, it has moved, but at the same time, it hasn't really moved at all because it's been the same Jeskai. It's kind of been like, I don't know, tuning, and then there's like decks that are decent versus Jeskai, like Stompy, that kind of rose up. But I don't know. He's just kind of like jockeying. It might just kind of be all noise. I don't know. Maybe the leagues are slightly different, but yeah, I don't know. Like it just seems kind of like just the same Jeskai or some.
Leagues are actually a lot different than the challenge. You'll play against all sorts of stuff in the leagues. You will not play against all sorts of stuff in the challenge. You're not going to play against slivers in the challenge. You might play against that in the league. You're not going to play against mono black land destruction in the challenge. You might play against that in a league.
Yeah, you'll occasionally play a weird deck in the challenge, but they're usually pretty.
Yeah, but usually not, you know?
I was so surprised when I played against your deck. I was fully surprised to be sitting down to some sort of mirror match, and you just started aggroing, and I was so happy because I love. So like playing mirror matches and stuff is like what it's about, but like it's a grind. I love in any format always. I just love playing against aggro because it is, or even combo, because it is just so much more straightforward and just kind of I don't know, intuitive in a way. Like sure you can get smashed, but like it just feels easier to kind of just navigate, and it's like less stressful or something. And I know either way it'll be done more quickly.
It's a lot less to consider.
Although your game versus Billster in top 4, you had a game that lasted forever. It seemed like your match took forever.
Yeah, I tried. I also tried on my mulligan to 5, man. I made that a fairly close game, but I mulligan to 5, and generally in Magic the Gathering, when one player goes to 5 and the other player keeps 7, the guy who keeps 7 wins. I know this is groundbreaking stuff here we're covering on the podcast, but...
Well, especially on Affinity, a synergy deck, more so. Like when you're playing Affinity, a deck that needs to hit Metalcraft, you have to add up to 3. It's harder to do when you start on 5 than 7, right?
I'm not sure what you're calling my deck Affinity.
Metalcraft. Call it Metalcraft. Got to count to 3.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. When your deck, certain decks small to 5 better than other decks, for sure. And that's sort of my issue with Metalcraft, moving forward with it. I don't know if I'm going to keep playing it. The deck mulligans a lot. You are constantly mulliganing with this deck.
That does not make my Jeskai version sound very good. The less consistent version of it.
Why, did you have to mulligan a lot this weekend too?
No, my Jeskai Metalcraft brew. Adding a color. No, I'm saying your deck with an extra color is probably not the right direction.
Well, I think it's an interesting deck. I don't know. It's a whole different direction. I don't know if the deck can support Thoughtcast or not. That's really something for you to... Now, getting back into the Sunday Challenge, I want to go over what we each played against. Over the course of your 6 rounds of Swiss, what did you play against? I know you went undefeated on the day.
So, in the first round, I sat down against a mirror match. So started off the day, it was probably good actually to just kind of work the cobwebs off and just like realize I'm in it for the grind. Then I played against Methonical's red-white token deck, and I ended up just kind of grinding through that. Then I play against mono white Tron, which is kind of scary, but I guess less scary than normal Tron, because at the end of the day, they're just kind of guy fishing, and it's kind of like almost like a mirror in a way. So I was fortunate to have pretty good draws, aggressive draws. I really just aggroed out, took that out. And then I played against the traditional Tron, which is scary. And that was a crazy game. They had early Tron and I just didn't have anything, but they just didn't draw the right cards and I was able to get that. Then a mirror match. So was 2 mirrors. That might have actually been versus the full Hawk version. And then I played against you on red-white. Then I had a mirror match of Cobblade opponent, Jeskai opponent, and a mirror match versus traditional Tron in the semifinals. So it was, I guess, 3 mirrors, 2 traditional Tron, a big Tron, and 2 flavors of red-white token deck, and then the aggro deck. So no Stompy, no burn.
Yeah, I don't think you'd expect to see burn in the challenge outside of round maybe 2.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that is probably when I tend to play it, right? Maybe like after I lose round 1, that I play against burn.
Yeah, it's so funny how Burns in the losers bracket in the challenge.
But, we see it top 4 and stuff pretty often, top 8. It could just be, variance, right?
Yeah, I don't know. That's baffling every time I see that. Yeah, I mean, enough people play it every week. People have to do well with it eventually.
Decks, people do win. And these tournaments aren't huge.
Yeah, especially this last one. We only had 63 players. So for me, I played against Jeskai round 1. I played against a very interesting build to Jeskai round 2, where I don't think my opponent had Spellstutter sprites at all. He ran 4 Augur of Bolus instead, and he also seemed to have 4 copies of Ponder. In addition to having some number of Brainstorms and some number of Preordains, he appeared to have 4 copies of Ponder. I actually thought he was Tribe at first, because he goes land, Ponder, land, Augur, right off the snow-covered plains and snow-covered island. I'm like, I'm playing against Tribe, apparently. I have no idea what this matchup's like. Probably bad for me, but then he played an Ash Barrens and Astrolabe and used his Ash Barrens and his Astrolabe to Lightning Bolt something. I'm like, oh, okay, he's just Jeskai, But it was a really interesting list. In round 3, I played against a previous guest of the podcast, our Italian friend, Krilla Piety, was playing Tron and didn't really string together much of anything in either game. Round 4, played against Dissonance. He was, of course, as always, on Stompy, and that was actually kind of frustrating game 1.
Sounds like an interesting matchup. I'm not exactly sure how that would go.
Well, it gets really good post-board, because I get those prismatic strands that I mentioned earlier, and he can send his team into my team, and I can make a bunch of blocks and then just say, yeah, no green damage. And then I also have some journeys to handle it's like we were talking about Journey and Jeskai, right? Where a few weeks ago, there's Lost Stompy in the leagues. There's Lost Stompy in the challenge. And the Jeskai deck started playing Journey to counteract that. Well, Journey's still just really good against him. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it gets a lot better after sideboard. He did win game 1. It was a close game. He kind of hit the best possible draw, 3 consecutive draws to win that game. But in the end, Stompy doesn't really beat Boros Metalcraft if you draw Prismatic Strands, and that's what wound up happening there. Round 5, I played against Lendoso, the Brazilian grinder. He was playing Boros Monarch. There's definitely some interesting plays that happened that match where I got to steal the Monarchy, and that was sort of all she wrote. Against you for round 6, we didn't really have to play. I could have just conceded and like made food or whatever, but like, when's the last time you and I played Magic?
Yeah, exactly. God.
It was the Blue-Black Delver mirror match the last time you and I played Magic.
Oh, okay.
So it's been like almost a year.
It was fun, yeah, and I definitely, brought my all. I'm sure you brought your all. Like after we had that good start, like we just were in that good like mindset to play a good game, I think.
It was a lot of fun. Like if anyone else were undefeated, I would have done the hell saw trick, right? Where in his episode of the podcast, he said when he was undefeated and he had a last round where he was in with a loss because he had a loss to give, he just mulliganed to 3, acted like he got screwed, and let his opponent play out his first handful of spells so that he knew what his opponent was playing. And then he just conceded the match and went and made food.
Yeah, that's a good strategy if you don't have that information.
Yeah, no, I thought about doing that, but I was like, well, no, Adam's playing Jessica. And you know what? I haven't played Adam in like a year, so let's just play. Let's just rumble. One of us is going to be undefeated through the Swiss. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. It was just a good. Either way, it would be like a sweet UXO'd or either it was a win either way for everybody.
Yeah, no, I was happy to see you, XO. I was happy to see you take this thing down. In round 7, I played against Affinity, and in round 8, I played against Bilster on Jeskai, and I did mulligan to 5 in game 3. It's just one of those things where like I beat the other Jeskai players on the day. I lost to the Jeskai players that took first and second. So
did you play against Jeskai much in the leagues?
So I haven't played against Jeskai a whole lot in the leagues with Boros Metalcraft, but the results are about the same. It's about 50-50. I mean, it can go either way. And generally, the better the Jeskai player, the more in trouble you are. Or if you mulligan, you might find yourself in trouble very quickly against Jeskai.
See, how did it go versus Affinity?
I don't think that's a good matchup at all. I think it's a really bad matchup, and Gorilla Shaman may just make it into my sideboard as a result. Boros Metalcraft does struggle in certain matchups just in general. Like, I've played against Bogles a handful of times in the leagues, and Bogles sucks. It's not a good matchup at all. They just ruin your day. They put Armadillo Cloak on a big dude, and you can never race them. So it's one of those things where there's 0 cards in my sideboard. In the list that was published, there's 0 cards for Bogles. In a way, Prismatic Strands works against Bogles, yes. But there's none of the traditional answers, like Leave No Trace, Standard Bearer, even Patrician Scorn or Aura Fracture could be used. I don't have any of those because I just assumed people would not play Bogles in the challenge. And I was lucky enough to get that correct because I can't be Bogles with Metalcraft. Right, and I'll be surprised if over a larger sample size, this deck beats Affinity, because the whole thing about this deck is it makes a bunch of 2/2s and some 3/3s, and then Affinity is just like, hey, check out all my 4/4s.
Exactly, yeah, it doesn't seem like you match up super well. Also, they have like Thoughtcast, they also have the combo kill.
Yeah, I'm not beating in a Tog, that's for sure. I got pretty lucky to win against Affinity in the top 8. I can whine all I want about mauling to 5 in the quarterfinals. I was lucky to be in the quarterfinals.
Are you going to run it back next week?
Well, no, actually, I kind of have to play this next week because it's the bonus playoff.
Oh, yeah, it's pure bonus value for you.
Well, just barely, dude. I barely have enough Pauper points for that because I didn't play after I qualified for the format championship. I was just like, well, I'm set. And I stopped playing a lot of leagues. I already don't play the challenge on a regular basis unless I'm ready, unless I'm prepared. So kind of have to play this weekend because I have the points to. There's no reason not to. It's an opportunity to talk about the tournament for, with another guest. I don't know if I'm going to play Metalcraft or not. Let's talk about that just for a second. What changes might you make between winning the challenge and the Pauper playoff?
Oh, yeah. So the one, I think we mentioned this before chatting, was I got burned by Pyroblast. I think it was actually, it was in the challenge, round 1 in the mirror. My opponent used Standard Bearer game 2 to protect their Archaeomancer, and they comboed me through my removal because of Standard Bearer, and specifically my Pyroblast could target his Standard Bearer, whereas Red Elemental Blast would not have been able to. And so I actually had a concrete situation where Red Blast was better, and I can't think of a reason why Pyroblast would be better in this deck in any situation. so I'm making that switch. I think maybe I want 3 and 1 Pyroblast just to mix it up, so keep my opponents guessing and think maybe I have like 6 or 7 of them. But that's it. I had a Circle Protection green. I didn't ever use because I didn't play against green. I've never tested it. I'd like to maybe have some testing with that. Leave No Trace. I've never really ever used ever, and I don't completely understand it other than that people have it, and obviously I think it'd be cool to have with Archaeomancer, and I see the value in one, but I used to have 2 standard bearers, and that slot, I guess, that Leave No Trace slot seems like the most flexible, especially because there's really not many enchantment decks out there. And then 1 Gorilla Shaman, I think, is going to be good to have in the future. Affinity is out there. Witching Well is a card. I've seen some Witching Well versions, and then, of course, the red-white aggro.
Yeah, I can confirm Gorilla Shaman is very good against Boros Metalcraft.
But otherwise, I'm pretty... Yeah, no, I'd be really happy to submit this 75.
That's cool, man. You got several days to do so, but you're already locked in. So you're ahead of the curve. You are in tune with the metagame. I'm the guy over here who's questioning what he's doing, what deck he's even playing, if I'm going to tune Boros Metalcraft, how I'm going to do that.
Yeah, well... But you're also the guy who's already qualified, and you have that luxury. You're just playing for pride and some tickets. But that's all, if you're playing for week to week, and you got to bring your best.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you still want that qualification. I know that you're qualified for other format championships. I'm sure you're trying to get qualified for all 4.
Yeah, so this one, I'm definitely trying to bring my A game. Because I've squandered the previous Pauper opportunities. So this one I especially want to, and it's gotten more competitive as the year's gone on. So the opportunities is getting harder and harder. So I'd definitely like to take advantage of this one, try to build that momentum and get in there. Because I was definitely planning on being here.
Yeah, I'm wishing you well on that. And I'll scoop to you if we play. I mean, you probably just beat me, but you can probably just beat me, but I'll scoop to you just to help the cause,
Appreciate that. Yeah, no, it should be a good event.
I'm looking forward to it as well. So, do you want to start wrapping up here with the weekly segments? Play of the day, and then give Slivers a silly ability.
So yeah, the play of the day, I kind of struggled to find one. I was really happy with my play of just coming into the deck that I was on, and the tuning. I had a pretty good play in one that stuck out was pretty good play in the semifinals, game 3 against Tron, where my opponent led on an island map and then an island, and I started on Astrolabe Skyfisher on the play. So on turn 3, I had an opportunity to play Trinket Mage and get another threat and really have a good clock. And I found that against Tron, having a good clock really helps. You cut off time that cuts off their ability to draw mystical teachings and stuff that can run away with the game when they have mana. So by not playing a threat is a big cost, and getting a threat down is good. But I decided to play Astrolabe and pass with Spell Stutter and Red Blast, and they, sure enough, played a Tron land and went for Muldrifter. I guess presumably you don't want to use your map because you only have 1 Tron land, because they didn't play a Tron land on turn 2, so they probably drew that Tron land, and they're not going to blow the map with only 1 Tron land. So they're just going to try to draw 2. So I was able to blast the Muldrifter. Then I played my Trinket Mage on my next turn and got an Ancient Den, or not Ancient Den, a Great Furnace, because I did not have another land. Then was able to use that to Red Blast the following turn as well on their second Muldrifter. And then at that point, I was in the driver's seat, and I just never let them get a card, whereas if I would have just went for that autopilot line of slamming a Trinket Mage, I would have had more damage, but they would have drawn more cards, and that could have assembled Tron and just let them stabilize at whatever life. So I guess and honestly, when I made it, I wasn't even thinking so deeply about the fact that the fact that they wouldn't use map and they would be more incentivized to use Muldrifter. So I'm actually, now that I analyze it, I'm really happy with that play.
So my play of the day this week, it comes from round 4, turn 4 of game 3, playing against Dissonance, and he's on Stompy. His board is Forest, 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 2 of which are tapped, Nest Invader, which has a Rancor on it, a Quirion Ranger, a River Boa that's benefiting from that untapped mana, a Vault Scourge, and an Eldrazi Spawn token. I have just drawn my card for the turn. My hand has been Lightning Bolt, Astrolabe, and I've just drawn a Core Skyfisher. My board, Ardent Recruit, Ancient Den, Great Furnace, another copy of Great Furnace. Most players would play Core Skyfisher, returning a land, replaying the land, leaving up Lightning Bolt. My play of the day, I passed. I just straight up passed her. I have 20 life to work with. he can send this team. I'll take the damage. If he attacks with River Boa, with Quirion Ranger, I'm blocked with the Ardent Recruit, so really his only attack is Vault Scourge and or Nest Invader. So I can take 5. I can take 5 for up to 2 turns here and be perfectly fine. So the most common card in my deck is a snow-covered land. That's what I'm most likely to draw. So I'm just going to wait till I can draw a snow-covered land, play my Astrolabe, play my Core Skyfisher, bouncing that Astrolabe, all while leaving Lightning Bolt untapped, or open rather, leaving a land untapped so Lightning Bolt can be open. So that's my play of the day. It's kind of a weird one, but it worked out. In the very next turn, I drew a snow land and I executed this plan and it came to fruition. It's just that I'm so far behind on this game state because I mulliganed to 5 this game. I'm so far behind my opponents in the aggro mirror match that I need to get back into the game, and just a Core Skyfisher by himself is not going to cut it. But a Core Skyfisher that draws a card maybe helps me find another Core Skyfisher, maybe another copy of Lightning Bolt, maybe another Ardent Recruit to really gum up the ground here. That is what's going to matter this game. So that's my play of the day. If anyone's curious, yes, Dissonance has 0 cards in hand, so this is even less of a risk just to let him swing in, presumably deal just 5 to me for a turn or 2. So that's my play of the day.
Pretty sick. As we said earlier that you kind of delayed gratification in the game. Had patience, and it was like a form of greedy, like being greedy, but knowing what you need to win, playing to win, not playing your blocker and trying not to lose. Pretty deep, pretty sweet.
Yeah, totally. And it's so weird to delay gratification when you're playing an aggro deck, especially in an aggro mirror match. Usually someone has to be the beatdown, right? And Dissonance, he's hellbent, right? He's the beatdown. So
you're playing burn, right? You have a removal spell. You're playing Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, so I've got that going for me as well. So it's not like I just have the one blocker. I have a removal spell to go with my blocker. And I've got the 20 life. That's the main thing, is I cannot make this play if I'm on 10 life.
Yeah, you have the resource to use. You cashed in your life for time.
Yeah, and I was just lucky that it did work out, that I did draw the... Because if I had just drawn like another Ancient Den, man, I would have been frustrated. Did you think of a Silly Sliver ability?
Yeah, I did. It took me so long. Like, I literally had nothing for you. Like, I even came up with a decent one, but it, like, Frenetic Sliver. I was like, what about a Blinking Sliver? I'm like, oh, Frenetic Sliver exists.
Well, I mean, generally the less magic related, the better, but it's up to you.
Yeah, so that, but then you were talking about these silly slivers, and, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about, like, Knight of the Hokey Pokey, but, like, these, like, weird unglued cards. But I came up. I've got my sliver. It's not that silly, but it's pretty stupid. It is from staring at these astrolabes. It is called Snow Sliver, and it is all slivers are snow permanents. Maybe you can call it Scred Sliver. So that's my sliver. It is Snow Sliver. All slivers are very snowy and frosty. Probably do some fun things with that.
So the slivers can enable gigantic Screds then.
Exactly, and they survive Dead of Winter, and there are a lot of other cool things going on with Snow Sliver. I'm not sure what color. For some reason, I'm thinking it's a black sliver, but it must not. Probably, I guess maybe it's like an artifact, but it has a snow cost, like that one thing. It's like a one mana artifact. It just costs a snow mana. All slivers have snow something, or maybe actually it's more like an Eldrazi snow. It's not an artifact. It's just a colorless snow mana thing.
Yeah, that might be Pauper playable.
Yeah, Snow Sliver. I doubt it, but hey, it would make your Gemhide slivers make snow mana. Okay, it would do some things.
All right, so my slivers ability this week is all slivers have been going through their high school yearbooks and are really surprised at what they thought was cool back in the day.
The Sliver yearbook, all the different slivers. A Sliver yearbook idea, that is actually what's funny. Just the yearbook of slivers.
You've been making content since 2010, since one of your friends convinced you that people would want to read what you have to write, that people would be interested in what you thought about things. Tell me how that has been for you over the years. What is it like if you have fans? I presume that you do at this stage in the game have fans. What is that like? How does that make you, how do you interact with that?
I guess, so probably less these days, but I used to get tons of Facebook requests, and that was, I guess, before Twitter was and other things were as big. And then I'll get messages and certain like questions from people here and there about decks, or occasionally people say they like my stuff, and a lot of times people want to, have you look at their thing and they want some sort of help or whatever, and or sometimes like kind words. But I don't think of myself as having fans, but probably do have people that read my stuff, week in and week out. I appreciate that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really. I guess what I'm doing is it's not really what I think about. I'm just trying to put out like good information and hope some people get something from it. If some people see what I'm saying, because I try to like put out stuff that I believe and true stuff, and try to like be very clear about what I'm communicating.
You've always been a very precise guy in my interactions with you.
That's funny because I think of myself as like a very kind of sloppy, careless, like kind of like I was even thinking about it lately, like a loose tolerance, like especially like in my play sometimes, just like not super fine tuned and precise. But I guess sometimes that comes out.
Well, I think one of my favorite interactions with you is when I made my first day 2 at a Grand Prix. And, the rest of the car was circled around me already. You eventually came over as well to join the other guys who were sweating me from the car. And then I win, I got the handshake, and like the other 2 guys from the car were like, what the heck are you doing? Like, you were, why are you playing around? What are you playing around? Why are you just playing the game this way? You could have won like a lot sooner. And I was actually playing around double. What was that card? There's a card from Mirrodin, Scars of Mirrodin, that the target opponent sacrifices an attacking creature, but if you have Metalcraft, they sacrifice 2 attacking creatures.
Yes. This was in Toronto.
Well, actually, no, this wasn't. This was in Nashville.
Oh, right. This was that same. The same era.
Yeah, the same season. I did run into you in Toronto, but we traveled to Nashville together for this tournament. So I forget the name of the card. It's something Justice, I feel like. It has 2 colorless and a white. Anyway, the guy had shown me a normal one in game 1 and a foil one in game 2.
Oh, okay.
So in game 3, I was like playing around him having both in his hand because he had like 4 cards in his hand and wasn't doing anything. So I literally waited until I could swing out with everything and get him through 2 copies of that, much to the other guys who joined us chagrin. And without saying anything, I just turned and I'm like, I think Adam can guess why I play the game that way. And you're like, I'm too busy wondering why you didn't win 6 turns ago. Did no one else realize that you have Necrotic Ooze in play? And that there is the guy that gets he's 2/4. It's like Bloodshot Trainee, where if his power is 4 or whatever, he can start dealing damage. And like, because Necrotic Ooze is just a 4/2, I don't need to do any tricks. I can just use Necrotic Ooze to remove a creature every turn. And I just haven't been doing it the entire game. And like the other people from the car ride are upset at me for playing around double this Metalcraft removal spell. I think its name is like Disruptive Justice or something like that. And you're just like, am I the only guy who knows that there's a Bloodshot Trainee in the graveyard and you have a Necrotic Ooze? Am I the only person in this room that knows this? And I was like, yeah, you're the only guy who saw that, because I definitely did not see that.
Okay. Yeah. No, that definitely is a thing. It's just the ability to process what's going on in the game of Magic is a pretty key skill for sure. And yeah, playing a precise game of Magic is important. Like I really believe you have to play really, really tight and not make mistakes. Tiny little things cost you. We've all experienced that.
Well, not just that, but if we can, and it's much easier to do in real life than it is online, but if you can get your opponent to make mistakes.
Right. That's the other side of it. Whole other side of it. I'm not thinking about that as probably as much if I'm thinking about my own self.
Well, as an online guy, I mean, it's really tough. You can't bait them as easily with your words and your actions, the way you tap lands a certain way or untap lands a certain way. You can't lead them to believe that you have certain things or don't have certain things. There's a lot less of an opportunity to say gotcha.
There's some. There's some timing, a little timing stuff. Like I very often will F6 and then F5 off, like F6 through their combat to make them think they're safe in their second main, but then like I'm F5. A lot of that stuff. But like that's just because I'm so like something I have to say is every game of Magic Online, but especially Pauper, I'm trying to time out my opponent. I did get like one of my opponents like kind of timed out. I think I beat them in the head like a minute or 2. Yeah, no, I'm always trying to time out people, and I routinely time out people or like put them under clock pressure because if I can play fast, it's just like a backdoor out. The Pauper is timing out your opponent, and it's pretty rewarding for me, at least whenever I time them out, because I have a serious issue with like my patience. I just get tilted when my opponents are slow, and I've been trying to accept the fact that if I believe I'm better than my opponent and I'm like playing a tournament, I'm probably gonna think faster and just I'm more experienced, and that's just kind of how it is. And I have to use that time to be calm and not feel impatient. But I also just try to use it against them by just letting their clock always tick, 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 tick. So I always have that buffer. So that way, when I do need to think for 5 minutes or whatever, like through a turn, I do that a lot of Vintage, playing like paradoxical outcome combo, play real fast, but then tank for 6 minutes, figure out some perfect Yawgmoth Will line or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's really good resource management. I think that offers a level of insight into the caliber of player that you are, that maybe a lot of people listening hadn't really thought that if I focus on playing quickly, more quickly than my opponent, then I can always take my time when I really need to take my time. And it's those, you're making considerations at that level, right? Because the game online is different. And I think that's fantastic insight for anyone listening. Is there, in addition to standing at the desk, right, in addition to trying to stay present in the moment while you're playing, what other ways do you not be sloppy? Like, in your words, you're worried about being sloppy. What else do you do to avoid the sloppiness?
I guess I'm just laughing. Well, the other tech is always Google your opponent's name plus the words MTG Goldfish and have their deck list open on your second screen when you play them, so you can play with basically perfect information. And I found, especially in, like, I guess if you're not as familiar or like playing Vintage or something like Commander 1v1 Singleton, like having that, and like especially in sideboarding, like whenever I play, I will figure out, okay, if I'm playing this deck, how am I going to sideboard versus me? What's coming in, what's coming out, and like try to get a picture of their post sideboard list and then have that in mind. So yeah, I'm always Googling their name if I don't know them. I'm looking at what they played and trying to guess. I mean, that's like, it's not cheating. It's just playing online, but like it's definitely an edge. It's like playing poker with a HUD. If you play online poker, you have HUD software that actually tracks your opponents. It's kind of what you're doing. Magic Online, just scouting.
So that's not something I do in just general matches of online Magic, but I remember having this discussion with you right after the second Pauper playoff, in which I took fourth, in which I told you that I made that deck that morning. I looked up every single qualified player, every single registered player. No, I started the night before. The night before, there were 9 registered players. Looked up all 9 of those people, started a list, went to sleep, came back early. As people were registering, I was looking them up as they were registering to finalize that deck, to finalize the sideboard, some main deck inclusions. Like, I knew about Archaeomancer. I knew about Archaeomancer and Ephemerate, right? You'll see the week before that I took 10th in the challenge. I was playing just the standard Jeskai list that, people play. I knew about that, right? I chose not to play it that day because I knew how many people in the field were on Affinity. I knew how many people were in the field were on Burn. I knew how many people in the field were on Stompy, and I wanted main deck Gurmag Anglers against Affinity, against Stompy, against Burn. I needed that 5/5 for 1 mana, man. It shuts down so many games against Stompy. It gives you a really good clock, and you can actually win some of the time against Burn. That's why I had 2 copies of Fire and Ice in that deck. So I've taken that strategy to the extreme before. I definitely know what you're talking about. But it's funny that you do that for pretty much every match.
Yeah, I try. Sometimes I'm lazy. I've been lazy lately, but like try to do it. I wear headphones to try to block out sound as much as I do to listen. Sometimes music can be distracting. Kind of got to be careful, but yeah, anything you can to focus.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the Pauper Players podcast, man. It was a treat talking Pauper with you, catching up a little bit. For anyone listening who's not familiar with you, where can they find you? Where can they find your MTG content?
Thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun to chat. You can find me on Twitter or Facebook, Adam Yurchik. You can find my content at tcgplayer.com every week. You can also check me out at quietspeculation.com if you have any interest in finance. Not too much Pauper finance crossover, although a little bit. Yeah, if you ever want to reach out with any questions or thoughts or anything to share, I'm always pretty available, so hit me up.
And thanks once more for Adam for coming on. Condescend, as he's known online. We're a bit out of touch right now with the metagame. This episode took a while to do. We went on a small break there. Bans happened. We now have a brand new, fresh metagame. So I do hope that Adam's message about tuning the machine, right? About taking care of yourself first, of getting a good night's sleep, of being prepared, of being focused, of being present, playing in the moment, resonates with everyone at home, more so than necessarily my analysis of why Bone Splitter is good in the format, because that's not true anymore. We have a new format. And as always, the Pauper Players Podcast is going to track down some more players who are shaping the metagame, the new metagame. Winter is over. The question is, what will spring forward? A note to end on this week. If you've missed the Pauper Players Podcast this past week, I encourage you to check out Pop It Like It's Hot. I had the opportunity to be a guest host on their platform this week to talk a little Pauper with a different crew. I actually share my thoughts. I speak my mind. My opinions are very much present, which is different from how I conduct myself in this space, because this space is about the guest. And there, I was the guest, so I took advantage of it. A link can be found in the description. As always, we encourage anyone looking to donate to the Pauper Players Podcast to donate instead to the JED Foundation, which helps troubled teens. We'll see you next week.